Chapter 1281 Plotting. Sangha Temple. The patriarchs of the four great families gathered in the middle of the Buddhist temple, in front of a huge table. Only 4 patriarchs sat in 4 directions. Even their closest guards were not qualified to enter. Here was the highest level meeting of the southwest region. In this meeting today, the atmosphere was somewhat serious. As the chief monk of Sangha Temple, Qinling Arc had a stern face, and his eyes carried an anger that was hard to hide. His gaze, if anything, fell on Patriarchs, who was on the side. What happened yesterday naturally could not be hidden from the 4 great clan heads of the southwest region. La Min Oju and Xiaja Gyatso did not say a word. This matter did not have anything to do with them, so the 2 of them decided to wait and see how Qinling Arc and Patriarchs would go over the top. Daiji was the first to speak. Yesterday, the protector of Sangha Temple was attacked while patrolling the border. The entire team was wiped out. Daring to lay hands on the Tantra's protectors in the snowy region, these people must have been under the spell of a demon, and their crime is unforgivable. Speaking here, Daiji's gaze leisurely turned to Patriarchs. Paji family head, according to the information I received, those people later went to your Paji family. Can this be true? The gazes of the 3 house lords fell on Patriarchs. It was already well known that those monks and soldiers were nominally from Sangha Temple but were following the orders of the Qinling Arc family. But Daiji, in the name of Sangha Temple's chief monk, turned on Patriarchs, just to see how Patriarchs would take it. Patriarchs frowned. Oh? How could there be such a thing? How come I don't know anything about it? The corner of La Min Oju's mouth turned up. Still pretending to be confused at a time like this, Your Excellency is truly an expert at pretending to be confused. Daiji's face was a little cold. In that case, those people don't have anything to do with the Paji family head? Paji Gesang laughed, folded his hands and recited the Buddha's name. Amitabha, there are so many people in Paji's family, I can't possibly know every single one of them. Yesterday we had a full day of meetings. I went back to take a nap, and just woke up and let call you guys over again. He frowned. Perhaps they were just passing through. Daiji snorted coldly. Gashan, don't play dumb. We have ample evidence in our hands that the people are in your Paji's house. Blaspheming the doors and killing a Tantra protector, you know how great this sin is. What, are you going to harbor those demons? Patriarchs shook his head. This is the first time I've heard of this matter. It needs to be investigated carefully, so let's do it this way. Wait for me to go back and look into it carefully. He suddenly straightened his face. If I really find out that someone has done such a thing, our Paji family will definitely not forgive him. Daiji sneered in his heart. He knew that Patriarchs would not hand over someone so easily. However, it was good that he had already made arrangements in advance. The people he sent out were among the best of the best from Sangha Temple. Going to the Paji family to ask for people in the name of the Tantra, if they dared not to give them, the monk soldiers waiting at the border of the Paji family would directly attack the Paji family when the time came. Don't look at the Paji family's manpower, but when they face the monk soldiers of Sangha Temple, they will eventually chicken out. This is the influence of the Tantra. After all, no one wanted to go to the 18 layers of hell after they died. Daiji snorted coldly. Even if this matter is ascertained, your Paji family will not be able to get away with it. It's useless to delay, the truth will always come out. Unless, those few demons can keep hiding in your Paji family and not come out. Patriarchs laughed. Why did Chief Monk say that? In my opinion, everything is a misunderstanding. Daiji said angrily. Paji family master. Killing the protector Vidra of Sangha Temple, can this also be a misunderstanding? Do you dare to say this to the Buddha? Patriarchs' eyes were somewhat hesitant. They grew up in the snowy region and had a devout faith in Tantric faith. Perhaps they did not act in accordance with the dogma of Buddhism, but they still had reverence from their souls for the gods and Buddhas. Why should Chief Monk be like this? I just feel that there must be something fishy about this matter, and I need to spend time to find out. Besides, it will soon be the day when the Dharma assembly will be held, and we have been preparing for it all this time. Don't let some chores affect the convening of the puja. Daiji and Pajigson were in a war of words. In fact, how the truth of the matter was, both of them were clear in their hearts. The monks led by Roland had already cleansed an unknown number of mercenaries who had entered the snowy region. Those people, if they were strong enough, would have killed Roland and the others long ago. Daiji was only using this as an excuse to lash out. The other two family heads were just watching the show from the sidelines, but inwardly, they were also greatly pleased that Roland and the others were killed. After all, those were the lapdogs of the Yashilangtai family, and the people invited by the other two great families hadn't rarely been targeted by them. Daiji sat on a chair, his rosary beads coiled in his hands, and faintly opened his mouth and sighed, "Alas, our four major Tusi families are of the same breath, one honor for all, one loss for all. Now that the Dharma assembly is about to be held, it is imperative that we do not cause conflict at such a time. Nowadays, the Undertaker is blessed by the gods and Buddhas and possesses transcendent power to protect our entire snowy region. It is only right that we should center on the Undertaker and serve him reverently. But right now, Sangha Temple's power is insufficient, and the demon even killed the Dharma protector Vajra. How can this boost the confidence of Tantra followers?" Daiji spoke while sizing up the three family heads with his gaze. "Therefore, I propose that the four of us dedicate a portion of our strength to the Undertaker to grow the prestige of Sangha Temple, so that we can also deter the curmudgeons of the outer realms," he said and raised his hand. "I, House Yashilangtai, will state my position first. I can dedicate 1,000 warriors and 5,000 serfs, including weapons, provisions for all." As the words came to this point, Pajigson and the other three family heads finally understood Daiji's purpose. He was using the name of the destruction of Roland's team this time to ask the three great families to hand over the soldiers and serfs in their hands. In these days, population and force represented power. This was tantamount to asking them to surrender the power in their hands. The faces of the three family heads became ugly. In the past, the Yashilangtai family hadn't done this many times, and the power of the three great families was just being slowly eaten away. Right now, the territory and troops and population in their hands was less than half of what it was when the end times came. Yashilangtai Daiji speaks well. He took the lead in donating, but he himself is the chief monk of Sangha Temple. How much is donated is just left pocket into right pocket, still for his use. Pajigson glanced at Daiji, his face cold. Xiaja Gyatso and La Men Oju were also looking at him. The Paji family was very powerful, second only to the Yashilangtai family. If the Undertaker hadn't come from the Yashilangtai family, the Paji family today would be the strongest force in the Snowy Plateau. In comparison, both the Xiaja and La Men families were weaker. Both of them were waiting for Pajigson's stance. Chapter 1282, Tweaking the Tiger to Leave the Mountain. After Daiji finished speaking, he looked at the three people present. "Everyone, Sangha Temple needs your help. It is not an offering to anyone, but to God and Buddha. Which of you is in favor of this, and which of you is against it?" The following three looked at each other with their eyes, none of them speaking first. Daiji smiled slightly and looked at Pajigson. "House Master Paji, I have already stated my position and am willing to dedicate men and horses and supplies. I wonder what you think." Pajigson was named, and there was no way to remain silent. He laughed, locked eyes with Daiji, and said without being humble, "The foundation of the Paji family has been passed down from my ancestors to the present day, and I, as a descendant, would never dare to hand it over at will. But since Chief Monk has opened his mouth, we are willing to dedicate more meat for sacrifice. Supplies could be given some, but people, absolutely not." Daiji's face went cold. Pajigson's attitude was not something he had expected. Over the past 2 years, Pajigson's aura had gotten weaker and weaker when he faced him. This made Daiji think that the entire snowy region was under his control. Although the Undertaker did not like conquests, he was after all a member of the Yashilangtai family. Even pulling the tiger's skin and pulling the banner was enough to make the other three families fearful. But today, he realized that Pajigson had changed. Daiji didn't understand where Pa Jigsaw got the courage to first reject his request. His request was not too high, 1,000 warriors and 5,000 serfs, just enough to make the three great families a bit painful, but not to the point of injury. In the past, he used this method of pulling meat with a blunt sword to eat away at the power of the three great families a little bit. But today, what was wrong with Pa Jigsaw? Who had suddenly given him the backbone to confront himself? Daiji frowned, his eyes cold and terrifying. La Min Oju and Xiaja Gyatso also did not expect Pa Jigsaw to suddenly be so hardened. Daiji suddenly laughed. Householder Paji, all these things I'm talking about are offered to the Buddha. You don't want Sangha Temple to look too embarrassed when the Dharma assembly is held, do you? Paji Gesang smiled faintly. The Divine Buddha is compassionate and will not care about such trivial matters. All of us in the Paji family are devout to the Buddha will understand. Amitabha. Daiji suddenly recited a Buddhist chant out loud. He coldly stared at Pa Jigsaw. Paji Gesang, do you think you can represent the Buddha's will, or can I? Pa Jigsaw now had Zhang backing him up, and his heart was bolstered. He leaned back in his chair and sneered. Chief monk, you've been sitting in this seat for only 2 years. Can you represent the Buddha so soon? Daiji gritted his teeth at Pa Jigsaw's anger. Well, it seems that your Paji family is really going against Sangha Temple. Pa Jigsaw stood up. Our Paji family devoutly believes in the Buddha, but we will not accept others to fulfill their own selfish desires in the name of the Buddha. After saying that, Paji Gesang first left his seat and left the Buddha hall in large strides. This scene watched the three of them dumbfounded. The Pa Jigsaw they knew, had he so much guts? Seeing this, La Min Oju's eyes flashed with a strange light, seemingly guessing something. If it wasn't backed by a powerful force, how could Pa Jigsaw have such an underlying strength? Daiji indignantly reached out and slapped his hand heavily on the table. Pa Jigsaw was challenging his authority to his face, and if he didn't address this issue properly, his majesty in snowy region would surely be greatly diminished. Daiji suddenly turned his head to look at La Min Oju and Xiaja Gyatso, then coldly narrowed his eyes. La Min family head, Xiaja family head, where's your attitude? Daiji's anger was already undisguised, and the two of them looked at each other, rather helpless in their hearts. Their family power was far inferior to the Paji family. Even if the Yashi Langtai family didn't send out an undertaker, it wouldn't be too much of a struggle to overthrow their family. What's more, there was still an undertaker present behind them. Unable to do so on his own, Xiaja Gyatso took a deep breath and said, within 3 days, we will honor these manpower and supplies to come to Sangha Temple. Daiji's face then eased a little, and then he looked at La Min Oju, the only woman among the Western family lords. La Min family head, what about you? La Min Oju's face was pale, not from fear, but from anger. But in front of Daiji, she had no way to snap. Gritting her teeth, she said coldly, our La Min family will also offer these within 3 days. The corners of Daiji's mouth then lifted into a smile. You are all smart people, doing what I say is the right choice. Just wait and see, those who go against the will of the gods and Buddhas will definitely pay for it. He carried his hands behind his back with an air of confidence. La Min Oju and Xiaja Gyatso glanced at each other, knowing that Daiji was definitely going to go after Paji's family. Although the hearts of the two were reluctant about paying resources, they were also looking forward to seeing the two great families of Yashi Langtai and Paji dogfighting. They were secretly looking forward to it, wondering how Daiji would go about it, and where was Paji Jeson's backbone and daring to confront Daiji head-on. Paji family city. The 3 Dharma protector Vajra of Sangha Temple went all the way like nobody's business, and first came to the courtyard of Paji's house. It was just that these 3 people, of course, couldn't possibly get through the Paji family's heavy guards. Even a powerful Delta-level mutant couldn't stop the firepower network of tens of thousands of soldiers. However, they came from Sangha Temple, the revered holy place in the hearts of everyone in Tantra. After those soldiers knew their identities and heard that the person who attacked the Dharma protector Vajra was in Paji's house, they immediately lost the courage to resist. Even when some of them pointed their guns at the three, they only dared to make a show of it, and not many of them dared to actually shoot. After the big steward Lubu got this news, panic was written all over his face. The trick of transferring the tiger away from the mountain. He hoofed it to the residence of Zhang Yi and the others, asking Zhang Yi and the others to take shelter for the time being. "Everyone, please follow me and hide inside the cellar. Pachi's house is so big, they will naturally leave if they can't find you," Lubu said to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi smiled and raised an eyebrow when he heard this. "Looking for me? Interesting. But there's nothing to hide, right?" "But..." Lubu was about to say more, but Zhang Yi reached out and patted his shoulder. "Since people want to come over to look for someone, do you think you can hide just because you want to?" Among the mutants, there were those who were good at searching, and there were also those who could manipulate the mind and make people spit out the truth. There were definitely such existences among the people coming from the other side, and if they didn't have exact information, how could they come to the door in a dignified manner? Zhang Yi did not cause trouble, but he was not afraid of it either. He was a highly paid mercenary hired by the Paji family, and after taking benefits from others, he had to do something, didn't he? Chapter 1283 Zhang Yi, you are evil. The three protectors of Sangha Temple arrived outside the huge courtyard of Paji's house with Muchuan as their leader. They stood guard just outside the main doors, demanding that the Paji family hand over the murderer of Roland and the others. This made it very difficult for the Paji family's private soldiers. The private soldiers with the strongest force would certainly not allow these people to enter the Paji family. However, these three protectors were the top combatants of Sangha Temple. With their abilities, they could not stop them at all. What's more, they also had scruples and didn't dare to really lay their hands on these people. "Gentlemen, please also hand over the murderer and maintain the dignity of the Tantra." Muchuan clasped his hands together and said to the private soldiers at the doors with a pious face. Janda, the chief commander of the private soldiers, held the Vajra pestle and blocked the main door with a stony face. "Grandmaster, our family head is not here, please also return." Muchuan sighed lightly. "Getting rid of demons and defending the way is the duty that my Tantra followers should fulfill. Have you guys even forgotten this?" The old monk behind him said indifferently, "Do you also want to become accomplices of the demons?" Janda's face immediately became very ugly. Once he was labeled with this name, it would be difficult for him to mix in snowy region in the future. One should know that the Paji family was able to maintain their current rule and also relied on the Tantra to maintain their authority in the folklore. Once they were labeled as cooperating with demons, there would be big problems internally. Janda gripped the Vajra pestle in his hand tightly, and in his heart, he had no idea how to deal with this kind of trouble. Out to really fight, there was no way he could beat the three protector Vajra in front of him. Muchuan's strength was clear to him, far above him. The point was, people were coming to the door with a legitimate reason. Janda didn't have the means to strike yet. Just at this time, a cool voice came from inside the doors. "I heard that someone is looking for me." As soon as the words fell, a cold man stepped out from within the doors, dressed in black combat uniforms, his gaze sizing up the three vestment-clad monks in front of him with interest. The three Muchuan's gazes fell on Zhang Yi. They instantly recognized that this was the mercenary leader who had killed Roland and the others. Muchuan's face instantly turned icy cold. "You are the demon who killed my Tantra protector?" The old monk Zangbu clasped his hands together and silently recited the Buddha's name. "Amitabha, the demonic aura on the scholar's body is too heavy. The demon must be removed before you can do so." The other monk, Ashina, in his voice and said coldly to Zhang Yi, "Come with us. Your body has been possessed by the devil, and only when we help you complete the exorcism ceremony will you be able to regain your virtuous heart." A cold smile emerged from the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth. The moment he came up, he labeled him as a demon. What an official authority! But in Tantra, this practice was indeed very effective. When the three monks said this, there were actually some people around who looked at Zhang Yi with odd gazes. The influence of Tantra was so great that even among the private soldiers of Paji's family, there were quite a few who would take the words of the monks of Sangha Temple at face value. Big Steward Lu Bu looked at Zhang Yi from the side with a worried face. It was just that Zhang Yi had told him when he came that there was no need to worry, he could handle everything himself. Zhang Yi took a step forward, crossed over Zhang De, and said indifferently, "What devil? Are you guys talking about the road-blocking demons that I killed? Don't worry about it, I have already helped you guys with those guys. From now on, the road from the snowy region plateau to the outside world will be unobstructed." Ah, Sheena bellowed, "Demon! Nonsense, what you killed was my Tantra's protector Vajra. He was a pious man who guarded the peace of the snowy plateau, and as a result he was killed by you. Since you have admitted it yourself, there is nothing more to say. Come with us immediately and accept the exorcism ceremony, that's the only way for you to return." While the old monk recited Buddha's name under his breath, Zhang Yi felt three forces locking him secretly. It seemed that once he made a move to resist, these three would strike without mercy and kill him. Zhang Yi slightly raised the corner of his mouth. "Oh? An exorcism ceremony? You guys aren't planning to use lynching, are you?" Muchuan chided, "Nonsense, my Buddhist sect is dedicated to goodness, even to an evildoer like you, I am compassionate. As long as you accept the demon removal ceremony and are able to put down the butcher's sword and become a Buddha, we can give you a chance to repent." Zhang Yi laughed coldly in his heart, these sect guys just like to take off their pants and fart. Obviously, everyone knew that they were up to no good, and they also knew that Zhang Yi knew that they were up to no good, but they still had to cover it up in a grandiose manner. Zhang Yi nodded, "All right then, I can come with you guys." Lu Bu's eyes widened as he lowered his voice to them, "Noblemen, you can't go with them." Lu Bu was dumbfounded, he had thought that Zhang Yi was planning to come out and fight with the Paji family against these three protector Vajra. Although the three men were strong, he could vaguely guess Zhang Yi's skill or two, and as long as Zhang Yi and the others came out, together with the Paji family's mutants, subduing these three men was not impossible. But if Zhang Yi wanted to go with them, the nature could change completely. "Noblemen, you can't trust them. The so-called demon removal ceremony is nothing more than severe torture and even injuring your life." Lu Bu whispered in Zhang Yi's ear, desperately giving him a wink. Zhang Yi smiled faintly, "I believe that these three are Buddhist monks and will not swindle me. Besides, I can't bear to see you guys clash with the three senior monks. If that's the case, won't it bring trouble to the Paji family?" Zhang Yi lowered his voice and said to Lu Bu, "We can't fight here, otherwise, it will give the first Sangha temple a reason to start a war. At that time, the Undertaker will all come out because of these three monks." Lu Bu's heart was shocked and his eyes were filled with gratitude as he looked at Zhang Yi. It was unthinkable that this nobleman would consider the Paji family to such an extent. He did not know that Zhang Yi merely did not want to expose his strength in front of so many people. There was no reason not to take the prey that was sent to the door. Zangbu recited the Buddha's name, Amitabha, "Don't worry, as long as you accept our exorcism ceremony and change your ways, we definitely won't harm you in the slightest." Zhang Yi nodded, "Thank you several monks, but I think there are some things we can talk about." The three monks laughed coldly in their hearts, but their mouths still agreed. Zhang Yi walked over to them in a big way, with an orange-colored civet cat sitting on his shoulder, looking harmless. The three monks did not take the cat seriously either. Muchuan clasped his hands together, and a storm of ice and snow instantly surged up around the Westerners, and in an instant, they disappeared into thin air. Lu Bu looked in their faraway direction, and while grateful for Zhang Yi's righteousness, he stomped his foot and hurriedly sent a message to Pa Jigsan. "Family Master, something big has happened. That noble person you invited back was taken away by the monks of Sangha Temple." Pa Jigsan was on his way back at this time. Hearing these words his eyes couldn't help but widen, and then he laughed out loud. Chapter 1284 Subduing Demons and Removing Devils. Zhang Yi followed the Muchuan trio as they left Paji's house, and shortly afterward, they arrived at another temple in Sarah City, the Great Transmission Temple. The faces of the Muchuan trio had been expressionless. They did not even look at Zhang Yi more than once, much less use any implements on him. In their eyes, at this moment, Zhang Yi did not have any ability to resist them, and was only able to obediently do their bidding. And in fact, they did have this kind of backbone. After all, these three people were all top-notch good fighters in terms of strength when looking at the entire Sangha temple. Otherwise, they also did not have the qualifications to become Yashilang Taideji's side of the most intimate war force. In Tantra, it was different from the outside world of mutants. That power that could probably be called faith was able to give them a special boost. Leaving the snowy region, their power would be greatly reduced, but as long as they were in this tantric sect's territory, their power would all increase at an unimaginable speed. This was also the reason why, with only a group of monks, Sangha Temple was able to suppress the entire southwest region without lifting their heads. Zhang Yi did not say anything and followed them all the way to the Grand Transmission Temple. He also wanted to see what these Tantra monks who were pretending to be gods wanted to do. After the trio brought Zhang Yi to the Great Chuan Temple, they led him to the huge and empty courtyard at the back. There was a near-abandoned stupa with so many holes on it that even the top of the stupa had collapsed. The trio led Zhang Yi into this pagoda, and as Zhang Yi took a look around, he felt that there seemed to be some sort of special formation under his feet. Although Zhang Yi was confident, his ever-vigilant heart did not relax. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought flour with him, not to mention that he wouldn't have turned on the everything follows the trail, to gain insight into his surroundings at all times. However, he did not sense any danger, and the spiritual domain's sensing of the surrounding 5 kilometers did not allow him to sense the presence of an epsilon-level battle force. Very good. Zhang Yi thought with a smile in his heart. The 3 monks surrounded Zhang Yi in the center. Lord Muchuan faced Zhang Yi and chanted the Buddha's name with his hands together. Amitabha, the demonic nature is too heavy on you, you should put down the butcher's sword now and become a Buddha. It's not too late to repent early. Zhang Yi looked at him with a compassionate face and suddenly asked with a smile, put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha on the ground? Great monk, how does it count? Muchuan said with a bashful face, my Tantra teaches the world and universalizes all sentient beings. If you want to repent, you only need to join my Tantra. I, Muchuan, can shave your head. As he said that, he even slowly took out a razor from inside his wide sleeves. Zhang Yi only felt amused. After all this nonsense, these people actually wanted to make themselves a monk? He smiled and asked, but I still have a wife and don't want to become a monk that early. Muchuan said once again, Amitabha, the demonic nature in you is too heavy, if you don't become a monk early, I'm afraid you'll really fall into the path of Asura. Scholar, it's better to vanish into the doors before it's too late. Saying this, Muchuan was about to walk towards Zhang Yi with his razor. Zhang Yi laughed, sorry, I have no intention of becoming a monk. The trio's faces changed instantly. The old monk Zangbu angrily pointed at Zhang Yi, the demonic nature in you seems to be out of control. Evil devil, I'll give you one last chance to repent, join Sangha Temple and repent sincerely, it's not too late. Zhang Yi had already seen the purpose of these people by now. He had killed Roland and displayed his strength. That was why the people of Sangha Temple were attempting to take him under their wing. After all, a captain-level mutant could not be cultivated that easily, especially since they believed that Zhang Yi was a senior captain-level mutant. Zhang Yi sneered and asked rhetorically, is not submitting to you an evil demon? Ashina reprimanded with a furious look on his face, you killed the protector Vidra of my Tantra, what is it if you are not an evil demon? Take advantage of the opportunity you've been given, otherwise, we'll have to subdue the demons and get rid of the devils. The corner of Zhang Yi's mouth hooked up slightly. That's a lot of reasoning. But sorry, asking me to join the Tantra? You guys aren't worthy yet. Zhang Yi gave a cold smile, not to mention you guys, even if your undertaker came, you wouldn't have the qualifications. The moment these words were uttered, the faces of the 3 of them revealed anger. In the entire southwest region, who would dare to say such treacherous words? To denigrate the Tantra's guardian deity in front of them was an unforgivable sin. You really do have a demonic nature seeping into your bone marrow, and it is difficult to rescue you. It seems that this demon removal ceremony can't be done today. Amitabha, let us save you from your lost ways. The old monk Zangbu looked compassionate, but the next moment he stretched out his right hand, and in an instant there was a loud clattering sound. A golden chain danced out from his sleeve, instantly wrapping all the space around Zhang Yi, and winding towards Zhang Yi's body. Zhang Yi wasted no time and immediately took out a long, narrow Edelman metal sword from the back of his submarine dragon armor. Black flames rose to the sky, and with just one sword, the thousands of golden chains shattered. Zhang Yi stood in the midst of the black flames, dressed in pitch-black armor and holding the long sword, truly resembling a demonic god that walked out from hell. Although the three of them were prepared in their hearts, they knew that the person who could kill Roland would not be weak. But the power displayed by Zhang Yi still left the three of them a little stunned. Zangbu's mantra chains was a top-level ability to bind people, but surprisingly, it was unable to stop Zhang Yi even for an instant. Flower, who was next to Zhang Yi, said, "I'll play with them, you'll be in charge of preying on the formation." Zhang Yi had not been using the space power that he was good at in order to hide his identity. Nowadays, he fought with people under the appearance of a fire-type melee mutant. But even so, such a person was no match for an ordinary Delta. Zhang Yi raised the long sword in his hand, which was burning with pitch-black flames, and with a twist of the blade, he slowly swept it towards the three people around him. "Let me see how much weight you hypocritical monks have today." In Muchuan's eyes, a stern and ferocious intent finally erupted. "Evil devil! Don't go wild." The three of them stepped back in unison, dodging Zhang Yi's sword. Muchuan held a string of rosary beads in both hands, closed both palms, and mouthed the words. In the next instant, the wind and clouds changed, and a giant tornado swept above the earth, mixed with violent ice and snow, directly enveloping all the area where Zhang Yi was. Zangbu mouthed the Buddha's name, and from behind him, infinite golden light bloomed out, and a Buddha statue's shadow were slowly emerging. Clattering dash from the Buddha statue, countless golden chains spread out, and the chains transformed by supernatural energy filled the entire space, locking towards Zhang Yi in the midst of the storm. In the face of these powerful attacks, Zhang Yi tried for the first time not to use the power of space, but to counterattack purely by virtue of the void might. Chapter 1285, Don't Call Me Demon. Above the long sword, the power of the void transformed into a dark flame that blazed. It burned more and more passionately amidst the huge storm tornado. Ice and snowstorms fell from the sky, connecting the earth, and the entire Grand Transfiguration Temple was instantly torn to shreds. The golden light penetrated the storm and followed its trajectory straight towards Zhang Yi. The three Dharma Protector Vajra worked together in tacit understanding, and it was not the first time they had used this tactic to exterminate those pagans who disobeyed the Tantra. The vast heavenly might was extremely astonishing. Seeing this, the monks and serfs in the distance had already prostrated themselves on the ground, trembling and shouting miracle. God and Buddha have manifested themselves. But suddenly, a black crack appeared in the middle of the huge ice storm. A long and narrow rift that ran through the heavens and the earth, rushing straight from the sky to the ground. It was a black sword, and the dark flames sliced hard through the ice and snow tornado, as well as splitting Zangbu's mantra chains. In an instant, all the visions between heaven and earth disappeared. Only a broken ruin was left behind. Zhang Yi stood in place, his surroundings had long been shattered, and only the square inches under his feet were not damaged in the slightest. Seeing this scene, the pupils of the three Muchuan people tightened violently. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. They couldn't believe what their eyes were seeing. These three were all Delta-level supernaturals with extremely high ability indexes, and Muchuan's ability index was even as high as 9,800 points. With the three of them joining forces, any mutant that wasn't Epsilon level would have a hard time escaping their control. Just at this moment, Asuna, who had not made a move, suddenly let out a long, distant cry. His body prostrated on the ground, and a violent burst of smoke and ice rose up. From amongst the smoke and dust, a giant yak that was dozens of meters tall appeared. It had 6 legs and 8 eyes, its body was reddish-golden, its muscles bulged high, and there was a mysterious Tantra Sanskrit incantation on the skin around its body. When the Yak King's front hooves violently stomped on the earth, the ground around it shook violently before instantly bursting into pieces. The dark impact caused the ground under Zhang Yi's feet to shatter as well. His feet were empty, and he unexpectedly fell towards the ground. The power of the earth can be manipulated. Zhang Yi instantly realized all of this. A huge crater appeared directly underneath his feet, and the earth shattered, so he had no chance to climb up even if he wanted to use his strength to do so. Right at this moment, a huge shadow flashed above Zhang Yi's head. The giant Yak King rushed to the top of his head and then fell straight down in a Tarzan-like posture. Oh! Interesting. He had to praise that the strength of these 3 people was indeed extraordinary. No wonder just 3 people dared to come to Pachi's house to take someone. The strength of the 3 people was strong, and there was an ample amount of long-range and melee combat, offense, defense, and control. No matter what kind of opponent they encountered, they all had good ways to deal with them. As for the current Zhang Yi, he had crashed into the ground and had no place to stand. A person's strength came from the earth, and if one's feet could not land on the ground, even if one possessed the greatest strength, one could not bring it into play. Naturally, Zhang Yi also had no way to use a slash. However, it was a pity. The person they encountered today was Zhang Yi. The Yak King crashed into the deep pit to directly crush Zhang Yi to death. Even if he couldn't be crushed to death, the Muchuan and Zangbu behind him quickly arrived. As long as Zangbu's chains bound Zhang Yi's body, they could make him lose all power of resistance. At that time, he would either choose to submit to Sangha Temple or choose to die. However, without waiting for Muchuan and Zangbu to arrive close, they saw a dark fire light rise up to the sky. Like a huge curved moon, it tore through the sky. Poof! Accompanying the rise of the dark moon was a rain of blood in the sky, as well as Ashina's mournful and incomparable screams. His huge, impenetrable body was unexpectedly slashed through the middle of his waist and abdomen. Revealing the tight yak meat, looking at it didn't make one feel gory, but actually had a feeling of increased appetite. Of course, this was only the appearance made by the supernatural ability, otherwise, Zhang Yi really wanted to cut down 2 pieces and bring them back to taste. Ashina was sliced into 2 halves and wailed with a mournful sound that made Muchuan and Zangbu's foreheads break out in cold sweat. Ashina's body after his giantization was extremely strong in defense, even artillery couldn't leave any marks on him. Surprisingly, it was just cut open by that guy. Ashina wasn't a fool, but he hadn't expected that Zhang Yi could even power up in midair. Zhang Yi rushed up from the sky among Ashina's 2 cut-off bodies and stepped on his body to return to the ground. He looked into the middle of the pit and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. In close combat, I'm not experienced enough. If I hadn't unleashed the power of space just now, I'm afraid I would have really been crushed by him. Having been accustomed to using the power of space to fight with firearms, it was indeed a bit disconcerting to suddenly change one's fighting style. Ashina was a beast-type ability user with extremely tenacious vitality. Even after being slashed he didn't die. But this was not necessarily a kind of luck, but rather a great cruelty. Muchuan and Zangbu saw this, and in their hearts, they had already created a kind of horror at the person in front of them. You! What exactly are you? Zangbu subconsciously took a few steps back, looking at Zhang Yi, who was dressed in black armor. It was truly as if he had seen the devil. Me? Zhang Yi carried the blood-dripping long sword in his right hand, the tip of the sword dragging on the ground, flowing with the still steaming Ashina's blood. He smiled faintly. I'm a demon. Demon. Muchuan and Zangbu already knew that they had to fight to the death now. The person in front of them, I'm afraid that in the entire southwest region, only the Undertaker would be able to subdue him. But right now, they couldn't wait for Undertaker's support. Muchuan shouted, the field of thousands of meters in a circle, the sky and the clouds gathered, the storm surged wildly, the earth above the thick ice and snow also rose up, obscuring the immediate sight. Zhangbu once again sailed out his golden chains. He pressed his hands on the earth, a golden chain from the earth towards Zhang Yi. However, Zhang Yi's face did not have any expression. These two people's abilities were indeed very interesting, but in his eyes, these two people were like transparent people, and all of their tactics were clearly seen by him. The long sword in his hand turned, and the blade emitted a nice dragon's roar in the bitter cold wind. "You guys are really too weak, it's not fun at all," Zhang Yi said, casually swinging the long sword in his hand forward. The dark power of the void spread out from amongst his palms, flickering and pulsating like flames, spreading out silently. It looked as if it was incomparably slow, but after an instant, it was like a prairie wildfire, with thousands of meters of black flames sweeping through the fan-shaped space in front of him. Shwoop dash dot 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 dot. In an instant, the entire heaven and earth, which was originally restless, quieted down.